What is good, guys? Matt Branch here. Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be doing high ticket sales 101. And what that means is just little tips and tricks that I've learned along the deals that I've done that have really helped push the deal forward in my direction and let me maintain total control of the sales calls. And here's the thing, too. I failed a lot along the way. So you're learning from my failures. You're learning from what I did wrong. So then you guys don't fail as much. So if this does help you out, guys, please drop a like and subscribe because I'm just trying to push as much of this good stuff out to you. I'm actually working on a $16,000 deal right now, which is pretty large. Yeah, but I've been able to maintain consistent $10,000 in income selling higher ticket items, anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per sale, which is pretty cool. No, that wasn't an item, it's a product. If you know, you know, but I can't expose that. But anyways, with that said, you guys know, if you guys have been on my channel for a while, you guys totally know what I sell, but you got to go creep the other videos to find out. Anyways, let's head over to the Canva whiteboard. All right, guys. So high ticket sales 101. Let's scroll this down right here. You run the meeting and not the client. So this is where I failed so many times where I let the client come in, talk about whatever they want to talk about, and we spend 5 to 10 minutes alone talking about BS that does not matter. Don't get me wrong. You want to build rapport and you want to build a good friendship with the client, but you have to let them know that you're the expert and that you're going to be guiding them. Because if you don't, it's going to make it really hard to progress the sales process forward, especially going into further meetings. Like if your closing takes 2 to 3 meetings and they're coming with the expectations to talk about this, then, and that, and whatever, it's not going to do you any good. It might get you a friend, but I think you're trying to close a deal here and not become friends. Don't get me wrong. You want to build rapport. You want to be a nice guy, but right out of the gate, if the client is chit chatting, limit that no matter what you can do. I kind of use the example like, hey, man, I love it. Let's chat a little bit more after the call. Let me just run through a couple things before we get started, which leads me to the next point. So I would use kind of that tone and just kind of put them in their place without putting them in their place, if that makes sense. Make sure they know that you're here to help, and to be able to help them to the best of your ability, you need to do your job and show them exactly what you're here to do for them. Give a proper layout and what their expectations should be. What I mean by that, let them know what we're going to be doing in the call. Let them know exactly what they should expect from you. Tell them, how the meetings go, whether it's going to take 1 or 2 meetings traditionally, 1 to 3 meetings traditionally. Let them know each stage of the deal right off the bat so they know what to expect. And going back to my last point is you're running the meeting and not the client. Give them those expectations. The next point, and this kind of ties the last two together, is you and the client are best friends, but in business to make money. Okay. Because what's going to happen if you're just a nice guy, they're going to just be like, oh, Matt, I can take advantage of Matt. I'm going to take his time. I'm going to ask him all these useless questions. I'm going to be talking about my dog, chasing that bone, whatever. You guys can be best friends, right? And that's good that a client thinks you're friends. That means you're doing your job and they don't think they're being sold anything. But remember, don't let them get too comfortable, because if you do, it's going to really prohibit the sales process, right? You want to move the deal forward. You don't want this deal closing 4 months from now. You want it closing in 1 to 3 days or however long those, calls are separated, no more than a week, I hope. But listen, you and the client are best friends, but in business to make money. Let them know, you could be talking, remember, limit the 35 seconds of BS talk at the beginning of the call, but progress the deal forward. And when you guys get off track, make sure to re-engage them. Let them know why they're here. Give them a slot to ask questions. So don't let them ramble out useless questions when you're giving your presentation. Give them a slot to ask questions. Be like, hey, man, let's save that. I have a slot for you to ask that. Make sure to write down on a paper. Keep taking notes. I love that question. I'll answer at the end here. Especially, let me just scroll down here, if you're not done your presentation. So if you're in the middle of your presentation, this person just keeps, this client, this prospect keeps asking questions, don't answer it yet, especially if you're not done your presentation. That's giving you friend vibes, not businessman vibes. You want to be professional. You want to save that to the end. Make sure they're taking notes is another thing, guys. Biggest thing, and this is something I did terribly, you're solving their problems and not your own. You shouldn't be always taking the conversation back to yourself. You should be asking more questions about their problems. Another thing I see people doing is, let's say if we're dealing with a real estate investor, we're solving something in their business, we're solving an issue in their business. Sometimes people will relate that to a totally different business that relates nothing to the problem we're trying to solve with the real estate investor. You should be relating to their problems with another business owner in real estate, not in dog food, not in, I don't know, whatever, building decks. We should be relating the problem in a way that relates to both businesses and trying to show them, because people don't really care about how it's helping other people. They want to know how it can help themselves. People are naturally selfish. So if you're talking about how it's helped someone else, but they're not in that exact situation, they might give you like, oh, that's really cool. Cool. That's cool, Matt. But in the back of their mind, what they're thinking is, how does this work for me? How does this solve my problems? Selfishly, and I know especially when I'm in a sales call getting sold, I don't really care what it did to John Doe. I want to know how this helps my situation. So relate everything back to my situation, not John Doe's. I don't care about the testimonials. I want to know, how does this help my business? So when you're solving their problems, they're going to be much more easily persuaded, especially if you're like tailoring the presentation to them specifically, right? So like when you're going into the meeting, make sure you know a little bit about this person. If you could find a way, whether it's on a lead form, make sure you know kind of how you can tailor this meeting to fit their specific problems, how it can relate to them specifically. The next high ticket sales tip is avoid talking generally and target their problems as it relates to them specifically. I guess I already answered this in the last kind of tip that I was talking about, but avoid talking generally and target their problems as it relates to them. So, like I said, that was my biggest flaw when I was first getting started. Is like, I'm like, oh yeah, this worked for Timmy over here. But meanwhile, my client didn't care about how this was helping Timmy. He wants to know, how could this work specifically in his business? And that's why it's important to tailor the presentation to the person you're talking to. So don't talk generally, target their problem specifically. Don't steer away from that. So how do we kind of tie all these together, and how do we not steer away from their problems? We must ask meaningful questions. And how we ask meaningful questions is by listening. So make sure you're taking notes throughout the meeting. And when it's time to, kind of implement how this will work for them, you should already have kind of an idea, but you must start asking meaningful questions. I mean, if you're not doing this, I don't know why you're even in sales. If you're probably not doing well, but that's like number one. I should have had this at the top of the list, but asking meaningful questions will lead into a lot more value that you can give back. And also, let's say if you were asking these questions and it's not going to work, like if this fit is not going to be good, you're going to know right off the bat rather than later. You should cut the deal off if it's not going to work for them, right? Just tell them honestly, like, hey man, like, based off what you told me and the questions I asked and how you've answered, I don't think this is going to be a good fit for us. Let them know, right? Don't try to drag clients along. Don't try to drag people along just for the sake of dragging them along. And then my last tip today is, if you use the strategy that you're talking to the client about, relate it back to them as much as possible. So I know a lot of these are kind of interlinked, but specifically, I'm just talking about, if you're using the strategy yourself, whether you're doing social media marketing or, something financially, and how you're using this financial concept yourself, like I do in my meetings, I would not, if I'm talking to, let's say, someone who's like, let me just go back to the dog food business because it's on the top of my head. If I'm talking to someone who has a dog food business, I don't want to talk to that guy specifically on how I'm using that strategy myself. I might mention it once or twice, but I won't talk to him about how I'm using it. I'm going to relate it back to his business as much as possible. You have to find a way to tailor it to them. And if you don't know anyone, this would be a good time to kind of tailor that presentation ahead of time to speak to that problem that we're trying to solve for that business owner. Now, here's the kicker, guys. All these things that I've said in this video won't work if you're not hopping in sales calls. So lead generation is the number one thing you guys should be focusing on, and specifically organic lead generation, because it makes everything that much easier. Though these tips might not work for everyone, the objective is for it to relate to the most amount of clients that you're working with, right? So you just got to be in more sales calls to gain the intuition to do things or not to do things, to use certain strategies and not to use certain strategies. So by no means am I saying this will specifically work for you. If you're selling a high ticket product or service, it's not going to be, a one call close. So you have to kind of implement certain strategies to allow you to kind of push that deal forward. And I think this is what that video was supposed to be, right? Not everyone's going to close. The goal is for this to be tailored to the most amount of people. And I seriously think if you guys implement these strategies, these little quick tips in your sales calls, you're going to have a much higher chance of those deals closing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as always. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.